responsible for developing this strategy for mobile and tablet for TurboTax. So bear with me. I'm going to go a little bit broad at the beginning and talk about how we got buy-in across the organization to support mobile and tablet. Ultimately, I will get to email, but I'm going to start broad across multiple marketing channels and then get to that point. So to start this off, can you roll the video, and then I'll jump in.
Make your taxes a snap with SnapTax from TurboTax. Snap a photo of your W-2 and it automatically imports your info. Just answer some easy questions and SnapTax guides you to your maximum refund. Your info's encrypted, so you can e-file securely right from your phone. Download SnapTax and try it out for free on iPhone and Android.
Thanks. So when I started working in mobile and tablet a couple of years ago, I basically walked into that. We had developed a few apps, many of which were designed and developed in what we call unstructured time. So people within the Intuit organization are allowed to devote 10% of their time to anything they want. And so a lot of people had developed apps, and we had put them into market. And what I was asked to do was develop marketing plans, execute on those marketing plans to basically drive downloads, to get people to use those apps. And so SnapTax was one of those. And then we had, we had a couple of other apps, and they spanned the shopping experience, the actual prep experience, like SnapTax or our iPad app, and then even status, so coming back and checking where your refund is in the mail. It occurred to me as we were looking at that mobile and tablet really is much more than apps. Right? If you think about it, mobile and tablets are just additional access points. They're more interaction points for our overall brand. And so I stepped back from developing those plans for the apps and started saying, well, we really need a long-term strategy. We need a vision. What is TurboTax going to do with mobile and tablet, not just to drive app business, but to drive our overall business, TurboTax Online, desktop even. And so I worked across the organization and basically created that vision that TurboTax in 3 years would be the easiest and only anytime, anywhere tax experience that really matters. And then put a stake in the ground. We said that in 3 years, 60% of TurboTax customers would use a mobile or tablet to start, complete, or assist with their return. So anywhere in the spectrum of tax experience, tax prep, tax shopping, we would have 60% of our customers actually accessing our brand through a mobile or tablet. And then the question became, how would we reach that 60% goal? And so we put 4 key strategies in place. One was, well, we've got to deliver outstanding experiences. This is really product focused. Things like SnapTax, even things like TurboTax Online, but optimized for mobile or optimized for tablet. We need to change how we interact with our customers. We need to market and support all TurboTax customers, not just people in our apps. But how do we leverage those mobile technologies to talk to our online customers, our desktop customers? We need to build the enabling infrastructure. Some of that's about cloud. Some of that's about tracking and tracking across multiple platforms. And then finally, we need to figure out how we can monetize these people. So exploring new business models. The thing that I'm going to focus on mostly today is how do we change how we interact with our customers? And again, that's all TurboTax customers. So the question became, as I started working across the marketing organization, how do we leverage mobile to accelerate our core business, our business overall? And I started looking across, and the first thing that I decided was, well, okay, offline advertising. We should start showing mobile devices, tablets, in our offline advertising. Why aren't we communicating through our television ads that TurboTax is accessible via mobile devices? And interestingly enough, I hit a brick wall. Our director of national advertising said, really interesting, but you know what? We don't want to advertise SnapTax. And I said, no. Mobile is an access point. TurboTax Online can be accessed from mobile. We can talk about mobile as another way to interact with our brand. And he said, gosh, our advertising has a lot to cover. We have to convey that TurboTax is easy. We have to drive confidence for our customers that they'll get it right. We have to explain this whole maximum refund, more money in your pocket. And he said, and how do I know that mobile's not actually going to be dilutive to our brand, right? That SnapTax experience is so easy, it may just dilute the brand. And so it came down to me understanding that I had to prove to this guy quantitatively that mobile and tablet would actually be accretive to our business, and showing them in our advertising would be helpful to the core business. And so we went out and we surveyed people, and we asked them, after showing them a concept, not necessarily SnapTax, but something related to mobile, after showing them that, how likely are you to actually use the TurboTax brand? And we found that 34% of tax store customers, and just to define that, tax store customers are like H&R Block customers, or people that use Jackson Hewitt. This is where we want to pull most of our customers from. 34% of them said that after knowing that TurboTax had a mobile concept, they would be much more likely to use our brand. And 55% of those tax store customers who actually have a smartphone would be more likely to use the brand. And we also asked these people, after seeing that mobile concept, how do you feel about the TurboTax brand? Because they're key attributes that we measure for our brand. And they said, gosh, that's easy. It's confident. It's innovative. I can get my maximum deductions even with that mobile idea. And so this was great. I brought this back to the director of national advertising, and I said, look, this will help us. Put it in our advertising. And I didn't just tell him. I told everybody that would listen to me. And I told them again and again and again, this is good for the TurboTax brand. Let's talk about it. And so we started showing mobile and tablet in our advertising last year. And it wasn't related to an app. It was related to TurboTax Online. Hey, look, there's this guy. You can go to TurboTax Online and do your federal taxes for free on your iPad. And we're going to continue pushing on that kind of stuff as you see our advertising launch in the next couple of months. We're going to show more mobile, more tablet in our national advertising because it is accretive to the brand. Beyond just television advertising, we started testing last year. We leveraged our print advertising and put QR codes in them. And basically, this was to drive more information. So if someone scanned that code in our print ads, they would actually land on a mobile-optimized landing experience where they could get a little bit more information about how TurboTax can cover their tax return, how they can get all of those deductions that they deserve. And we made our ads Shazamable. So basically, we know that a lot of people sitting on their couch at night watching television have their phone right next to them. They've got their tablet right next to them. And so on some of our advertising, we actually put tags in there so that they could Shazam that ad. And when they tagged that, then they would get a mobile-optimized experience that talked about the brand. It drove deeper engagement. It gave them more information about the brand. It allowed them to connect with us a little bit more. And then we started using the location that's inherent in mobile devices to actually drive retail traffic, right? So many people are searching on their mobile device for information about brands. And so as they search for TurboTax or as they search for tax, they would get an ad pop up, and if they click through, they could actually figure out where to buy our products in a retail location. And we even gave them directions on how to get there. What's the closest retail location where you can get your TurboTax desktop product? The other thing that we knew was a lot of people search on their phones. They're searching for information. And so about a year ago, we kind of put stuff together. I worked with the online advertising team that handles all of our search, and we made a commitment to invest basically to the point where we would, if someone searched for TurboTax, we would show up in the top 1 or 2 position in those search results. And we drove to not a fantastic landing experience. As you can see, I'm not in California, so I know it's not an earthquake, right? Yeah. Anyway, so we drove, as you can see, to not a fantastic landing experience. And by the end of the year, we started looking at the results. Oh, that's a good. Okay. Hopefully it's fixed. Are we good?
Presentation is earth-shattering.
I guess so. Thank you. So we basically made a small investment last year. We got to the number 1 or number 2 position, but we didn't drive to a fantastic landing experience. We were also measuring that success in this case based on units. And reality is, they may be searching and they may be wanting to get somewhere, but we weren't really delivering the best experience. And at the end of the year, we looked at that and we found that mobile queries for our brand represented about 18% of all of our search volume. This was up from 8% the prior year. And we expected it to actually be about 25% by this time, by today. Tax-related searches, just generally tax-related, not TurboTax specific, had jumped by over 206% year over year. And this was outpacing desktop searches for tax by a factor of 20, right? And so that data gave us a little bit more to actually put underneath this support for mobile. And as we go into this year, we've actually made a decision to invest appropriately based on those numbers in search, and then start driving to a mobile optimized landing experience. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that last year we talked about success as units. In other words, can that search drive a unit of TurboTax? Now, some people do actually do their taxes on their phone. We do have some people actually going through TurboTax online. It's a small number. And so I pushed back on the organization. I said, well, if mobile, let's set our goals appropriately. Let's figure out what the right goals are for mobile. And we made a decision to actually base mobile success or anything that we did in marketing channels on auth, or what we call login, right? If we can get someone from a mobile search to get to a landing page and log in, that's successful, because then we can talk to them by email. Then we can talk to them through other channels, even online advertising, knowing that they've initiated something in our product that year. The other thing that we have in market is a mobile site, right? And that was launched a couple of years ago. And it was good view products. We could kind of get to our apps, things like that. And as we looked at the end of the year last year, we saw that traffic to TurboTax.com from mobile devices had actually doubled. So 1 in 10 of our TurboTax visitors was coming through a mobile device. A lot of them were going in for support. A lot of them, based on what we were tracking on that mobile site, were appearing to be returning customers. In other words, they were looking for their information from prior tax years. They were looking for support and answers to their tax questions. And so we're looking at ways to optimize that based on what we see them doing on that mobile site. And so the one takeaway from this is get something out there, measure it, and then test it. And define the goals, as I said in the previous slide, based on what the expectations are for mobile, not necessarily what the expectations are for your desktop experiences. And so then I said that I would actually get into email. And so this is where I start moving in that direction. We actually approached the direct response team, and this is before I worked on direct response or email. I approached them and said, hey, we need to start sending emails to our customers, and we need to think about that in the space of a phone or a tablet, but mostly a phone, because that's where the bigger challenge is. And they came back and they said, well, you know what? We've already kind of locked down our segmentation. We're not in a position to really design all of our emails differently for people who come into mobile devices. But we can go out and we can find a bunch of SnapTax customers and we can email them and tell them to come back. Okay, so that's fine. We sent out an email last year to people who had touched SnapTax in prior years, and we said, hey, it's updated, come back and use SnapTax again. And we found, and this is an old data point, as we looked at the results, that about 22, and I think it was 25% of TurboTax customers had actually opened on a mobile device. Now, this was March of last year, April of last year, because we pulled this together at the end of the tax season. We've since seen that 30 to 40% are now opening. So I'm thinking about data points even just a couple of weeks ago, where I think about 43% were opening on a mobile device. And so now, especially because I'm on the direct response team, we're actually taking a different approach. And we've put templates in place this year, and very much similar to what Matt Caldwell talked about yesterday. We're built on templates now. We're using responsive design, and we're doing this not just to emails to our app users. We're doing this for emails to the entire TurboTax customer base. And so what happens here is if we detect what device they're coming in on, then because of the responsive design, our emails will reformat so that they deliver well and they're a great experience for people coming in on mobile. This example shows basically our desktop, and you can see the box shots on the right of that email. Using responsive design, we'll keep that left side, but the box shots then flow underneath. And the 3 pods below that flow underneath that. And it's proving to be a fantastic experience. And what's more, and I've talked about this before, is we're driving them to mobile optimized landing experiences. Again, if we can get them to actually log in, if we can get them to engage, then we can continue that communication stream. One of the very, very important things that we're doing this year, and this isn't just email specific, it's across all channels with mobile, is measuring. So with the help from Axiom Digital Insight, we're now tracking how many opens come through a mobile device, and we're pushing on that. How many of those opens through a mobile device are the first open versus are they opening first on mobile and then on desktop, or vice versa? And we'll be monitoring that all season. The other thing that we did last year was we started pushing on SMS text messaging. And we, in March, gave people, we launched this in March, and we gave people who had gotten through their tax return the option to be notified by text that their e-file had either been accepted or rejected by the IRS. That's a critical piece of information because if it's been rejected, you've got to go back and refile. And so we put an opt-in, in a sense, on one of the last screens of the product. They've filed their taxes. We typically send them an email that says, hey, the IRS has accepted your return. We gave them that option to actually put in their mobile number at that point and get this information via text. This launched on like March 8th of last year, and 27% of all the customers who filed their taxes actually signed up for that notification. And you can see what it looked like on the right. Great news, your federal return was accepted by the IRS. Look for an email and get more details. Or, hey, your return was rejected by the IRS. Check your email so that you can go back in and fix something in your return and refile. And this was my experience. I signed up for this last year, and it was a fantastic experience. So what we're doing this year, and SMS is one of the things that's actually being incorporated into our direct response team. So the people that handle email are now actually looking at how can we communicate via mobile devices through text messaging as well. We're expanding and testing to drive more marketing-focused communication. So the whole e-file accept or reject thing from the IRS is very much a product notification. It's kind of that critical, is your tax return done or not? We have a whole series of communications for what we call start not completes. In other words, people come into TurboTax, they start their tax return, and then they drop out at some point. And so within our My Account experience this year, we've actually added a mobile number option where people can add that to their account. And if they come in and they get to a point in their taxes but they can't e-file yet and they drop out, because e-file doesn't go live until January 6th, I think, this year, and people can actually get into TurboTax Online right now and start doing their taxes. If they get to that point where they can't e-file and they drop out, we're going to send them a text message that says, hey, e-file's available, come back in, finish your tax return and file. Or if they get to a point in their tax return and for whatever reason they drop out, they lost confidence, they don't have time, whatever that is, we plan on communicating with them via text to tell them to come back. Now, this has been a really effective communication stream through email. It's driven a tremendous amount of lift, and so we're hoping that through text messaging, we can see similar results just through a different format and through a different platform. As I was kind of putting this together, I started thinking about what did I learn through this whole process of getting buy-in from the organization to start using mobile to market to our customers, to start acknowledging mobile as a definitive access point or interaction point for our TurboTax customers. And there were a couple of key points that were very specific to mobile when I did this. And then as I thought about this, and even as I listened to some of the things that have happened over the past couple of days, I think these apply to anything. These apply to email, they apply to marketing in general. But the things that I found really successful were getting a dedicated team in place. So, and for mobile, it was very small for me. I had like 2 people on the marketing side who were absolutely dedicated to mobile. And I had to find other people who would give their time or buy in. I had to influence them to actually do things. But finding that team that could be passionate about and supportive of mobile was critical. The other thing was share broadly and share often. So I gave the example of the director of national advertising and kind of hitting that brick wall and going and getting the data point. I had to share that not just with him, but with many people, and I had to share it a lot. I had to share the vision across the organization with the VPs, and then ultimately going to Scott Cook, who's one of the founders of Intuit. I had to share all the data points that we got at the end of last tax season to start influencing what we're going to do this tax season. So those learnings and the data is huge in helping get that support. The other thing that was critical was setting goals and measuring those goals over time. And I think in the mobile space or in the email space, you have to be very clear about the goals. You have to measure them, and they have to be goals that are relevant to specifically what you're trying to do. And then the last thing was test, learn, apply, and repeat that again. And so some of that stuff, with the QR codes or getting the right experiences in that weren't optimized to being optimized, all of that was about getting information, proving to the organization that we're on the right path, and then optimizing that and improving over time. That's it. You guys have any questions?
Questions?
Liz, thank you. That was great. Very generous of you to share so much. So I'm a little bit of a disconnect for me where you launched this great product, right? So the SnapTax thing is cool.
Yeah.
But yet there was such a lack of understanding and support you know what I mean? It's already launched. Like, you had to do research after you launched the product. You know what I mean? Could you help me?
Well, there are a couple of things about that. So it was a fantastic app, and we had many fantastic apps in place. There were 2 challenges, really. One is those apps don't drive a ton of revenue, right? And they're so new. I mean, they're driving more and more revenue now. But if the organization has to prioritize on things that are going to drive revenue, that's not one of them. Right? And so it became about setting that long-term vision and saying, this is where our customers are. We need to be where our customers are, and we need to invest in that way. The other thing that was a challenge, and it's one of the reasons that I brought that video in here, was communicating to the organization and helping them understand that mobile is not just about apps, right? So that was where our organization was a year or 2 ago. It was all about SnapTax because it's really cool, right? But getting people beyond that cool factor and saying, that's great, yes, and there's more to it than that. And so that's why I tried to focus a lot of this on what else did we do besides marketing our apps. There was a ton of marketing we did for our apps that I didn't even cover in here because it became really important to influence the organization into how to market to support our core business by leveraging mobile. Okay.
Hi, how much time was split between mobile web and mobile apps? How much of your time was spent between the 2?
Define time in that case.
Like a percentage, like 50-50, or?
In terms of?
Your time spent on marketing mobile web versus marketing apps.
The majority was spent on apps last year. Most of our marketing plans and the execution were focused on driving app business. There's one caveat that I'll say to that, which is SnapTax, for example, is a very narrowly focused product. It was, last year anyway, it was for people who had 1040 easy tax returns, okay? That actually accounts for about 20% of the tax-paying population. But because of that, you can get into SnapTax, and you can disqualify out of it. In other words, you can come in and you've got a 1040A, or you're a 1040 long customer, and you can't use that app. And so we actually found a way to push people over to our online experience. That became incredibly important in terms of delivering the right experience. Once those people disqualify and we push them over to online, we had to actually then market online as well. But I would say if I had to put a number to it, 70-30, 70 app, 30 web.
I actually have a question. So you kind of had this underground, movement, it seems like, to really get this thing rolling. How is it now that it's out there? I mean, it all looks incredible. There's a lot of thought, obviously, about cross-channel and what's going on. Mm-hmm. What's the temperature now around some of this?
I'm actually really proud of that, because as I look across the marketing channels now, whereas a year or two ago, none of the people in those channels was thinking about, how are we going to do that in mobile? How are we going to leverage mobile to actually drive that? Nobody was asking that question. And as I'm working across the marketing organization now, every single channel is saying, what's the role of mobile in our channel? And that's just become a core part of their thinking in anything that they go to market with. So it's changed, definitely.
So following on that, are those people that initially push back or question the viability of mobile solutions, are they still asking for where's the revenue from it? Or are they starting to see that the desirability and just the new access to the core business is enough? Or is it still about revenue?
It's always going to be about revenue. So ultimately it always is. But some of the people, and I'm thinking of people specifically, have really changed their mindset. And they have started to see that we can actually drive incremental revenue by talking about things that are different and set us apart from the competition, right? And so even the director of national advertising, he is all over this right now. And he sees it as a way to actually position ourselves differently than Sage and our block in our advertising. There's always going to be that question about, are we measuring the right things, and really, is it accretive to our business? And we'll continuously have to prove that, but there's a little bit more of a road to prove this. We have a little bit longer to do that. So.
Has the SnapTax functionality of being able to just take a picture of your W-2 made it into the main product?
I can't say. It's a good question. Yep.
Hi, nice work with the responsive layout. It looked really good. Could you share your experience with creating it? Like, did you do it in-house? How was it done? What's the excuse me? What's the experience been since you've launched it?
Well, we're just in the process of launching it. So far, it's been good. So yeah, think about tax season. We've just started really putting emails out there within the past month or so, right? But it's been fantastic so far. The process started way back when we actually put templates in place. And the templates were not necessarily about mobile. Templates were about driving efficiency, right? And just making sure that we weren't creating the wheel every time we designed an email campaign. Now, the templates made it easier to actually get responsive coding in place. In terms of the actual design, we have 2 agencies that we work with from a design standpoint. The interesting thing about doing the templates is, let me see if I can go back here for a second. This might help. So I know this is kind of hard to see. In a lot of our emails, we have that hero spot along the top, and then we have some information in the middle, and then we have 3 pods, right? In the past, our agencies were designing that whole email again and again and again. They were redesigning the pods, they changed the copy in the pods, and for whatever reason, they just felt like it, you know. We kind of felt like it. And so from a creative standpoint, a design standpoint, this year, we've actually asked our agencies to really just focus on that hero spot, right? Get that call to action in there, get the button in there, get them moving, and don't worry about these pods, because these are just things that will fall into place as the email is programmed and built. Is that helpful? Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. Well, Elizabeth, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So,